Oh boy, here it is. My cap is not fitting me. That's okay.
Hello.
Thank you.
You're listening to the final episode of COVID-18, a podcast that explores high school seniors' experiences during the pandemic. On June 3rd and 4th, 2020, the Merced Union High School District held their graduation ceremonies. The graduation was much like the description in episode 6, but it was not what I had originally thought in my head. Still, most seniors enjoyed it. Even Pete Garcia, who last spoke in episode 9 about Merced, enjoyed the experience, when symbolic events like this one weren't ever his thing.
All of these ceremonies and these things that are so important to everyone else just seem very trivial to me. But as I was putting on my dress clothes and I was putting on my cap and gown, I was feeling very elated. And it wasn't necessarily because of the ceremony or anything. It was because I was I'd never have to go back to El Capitan ever again. It was a feeling of sort of release. I felt free.
Akina Westmoreland, who also spoke last week about Merced, thought it had a little bit more attention and movement than what she was expecting.
When you first think of it, you're just okay, this is like a drive-through. You just boom, you give them money and then you get your stuff. That's how I was thinking of it. I was not thinking of it as because we took photo op pictures. I got out twice. We got out to get the photo op pictures, and then we turned around, we got back in the car, and then I got out again to walk the stage. And I was just do I really want to get out again?
Which brings up a very important point. It was so hot. At the time of both days for graduates, it was in the hundreds weather-wise. Not what we were imagining, but definitely well suited for the arrangement of staying in the car the majority of the time, instead of under the sun. But beyond graduation, this experience was an otherworldly one for everyone, especially seniors, who had been envisioning their last few months of senior year for so long. And sometimes, when you get outside your comfort zone, you do things you wouldn't normally do. And sometimes, these things end up being better than what you had originally planned. One thing was the senior baskets. MEHSD started a Facebook group for all seniors and their parents, allowing anyone to, quote, adopt a senior, which meant they would get a little basket of goodies in celebration of their accomplishments. Evan Ayek, who spoke last week about going to support local businesses, really enjoyed doing this with his family.
So we adopted a student with special needs, and yeah, I think he'll really enjoy his basket when he receives it.
And as far as making sure seniors would really be able to experience this, I asked him about his thoughts on the inclusivity.
I think they've been doing a pretty good job of getting everybody, trying to get everybody included and find a way to make sure no one gets left out or try to find someone who's not been adopted.
If you would have asked me back in March if I could get the last few months of my senior year back, I would have cried yes, no questions asked. If you were to ask me that now, I would say no. Minus the deaths and huge spread, without this, we wouldn't have received gifts from complete strangers, sat in the comfortable seats in our cars to graduate, learn to love ourselves, our families, or the world a little more. We wouldn't have fought for justice that has been needing to take place for ages now. We wouldn't have started to truly appreciate the things and people we have, or to take moments day by day, instead of compensating for the future. We wouldn't have experienced history as it was being played out. Taking on this pandemic, we also took on a lot of other things. Some things we hadn't really thought about before.
I learned to not take things for granted, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I was so ready for the activities that, I was working hard for my AP test and everything. And I didn't think that just one day it would just change, So in the future, I really want to appreciate the little things in life.
Yeah.
School related and, life-wise as well.
I think one of the big things that I've learned is that we are all, as people, we're all more alike than what we either refuse to admit or just didn't realize. And now that everyone has sort of had this time to really sit back and reflect on what's going on, a lot of people have been sort of thinking more clearly. A lot of people know what they want, which is sort of driving this whole Black Lives Matter movement. A lot of people have been sitting back and realizing this isn't how we deserve to be treated. Very much hope that America walks out of this enlightened.
I started this podcast series with the hope of sharing the voices of high school seniors. And that is what I accomplished. But what I also experienced was beyond 11 episodes of life in quarantine. It was a connection between young adults fighting for the same truth, their truth. And I would have never experienced that without the pandemic. And neither would any of you listeners. This pandemic was tragic, no doubt about it. But it also forced others to see reality. There will still be hardships, and futures where we might have to take the shorter straw. But it's only there for us to tackle. And I have a feeling that this class will not hesitate to rise above any obstacle. They don't say 2020 is our year anymore. On the contrary, for most people, it's now thought of as the worst year ever. But I think this generation has always been at the eye of the storm. And that, I think, is why this generation is so tenaciously strong. If you didn't get a chance to listen to the rest of the episodes in this series, I highly recommend that you do. For those of you who have listened and subscribed, there are no words I can use to express how grateful I am for it. You gave me and so many others a voice, and that is better than anything. And some final words from our graduates.
Everything happens for a reason.
Just keep going. Just keep pushing. Because in the end, it will pay off.
Be prepared for anything and just make sure that if anything were to happen, you have what it takes to get through it.
Even throughout all this chaos, you remember who you are and just where it is you want to go and your plans and goals.
Thank you to the loyal listeners, the seniors, the faculty, Youth Leadership Institute and We Said Youth Media, and anyone else who supported the making of this podcast. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Stay safe.
Okay. Alright, that's it.
Okay, Cosmo says hi. If this ends up in the podcast, Cosmo is the most famous cat at El Capitan High School, and he says what's up. Peace.
This is a production of Youth Leadership Institute and We Said Youth Media. I'm your host, creator, and producer, Rachel Livinall, signing out.